All right, I am here with Kathy Wynn. Kathy is Carl Dahlberg's daughter, and she was also in the Bonners Ferry Community Orchestra, and she's going to share some of her experiences with us today. Kathy, thanks so much for letting me talk to you and for being here and taking the time to share with us your experiences.
You're welcome.
So I'm just wondering, first of all, what was your musical background?
Okay, well, when I was, I think in first grade, I started taking piano lessons. So I learned to read music then. And then when I was in third grade, I was able to get flute lessons from, I believe it was Jan Klumpf. I don't know if she still lives here. But so she gave me flute lessons for, I think, about a year. And then I started in the orchestra when I was in about fourth grade. And I was a beginner. I mean, I had only played for a year, I believe. And so I always remember how patient and helpful all the other flute players were, because I was a kid. You know, I didn't know what to do. I didn't understand how to count measures when we didn't play. I didn't really know the etiquette of, you know, how you were supposed to listen and everything.
So and follow the conductor.
And follow the conductor and all these, and they really taught me a lot of things about how to manage being in the orchestra, how to take care of my flute, you know, proper posture and all these. They tutored me. They were very patient. So that was.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah. And the fact that Sabira was supportive of families playing together, because your dad was playing. Sure. And you were playing. Yeah. Did you have anyone else in your family that was playing at that time?
No, not at that time. No.
Well, I think that's great that she allowed the kids to play with the adults.
She did. Yeah.
And that made for a really great learning curve for you.
And also she had students. She had young students who were kids and they were playing the violin. And she would let them play in the orchestra if they wanted to. And people who were in school could come and play if they wanted. But I remember we had one performance that I really remember where she had bird calls. I don't remember what the piece was, but there were bird calls in it. And so she had a lot of children who had little whistles and things that would make the bird calls. And it was really fascinating to see, because all these young children, they were allowed to play in the orchestra, and they'd play their certain bird call at a certain time. Can't remember for the life of me what the piece was, but it was very fascinating.
That's great. So what do you feel, how do you feel the orchestra inspired you in your musical journey? Because obviously you're still playing music, right?
I still play, Yeah, so I think it was a real motivator, because I mean, you want to do a good job, and so you practice much more than you would have otherwise. I mean, everybody goes to band when they're in school, and band is great, and it's fun, but the orchestra, I felt like I was it was pushing me to do better because I was in this real orchestra. And so I think it was a real motivator. And they were so encouraging. I mean, I just can't imagine how they put up with me all that time, because I would probably make mistakes all the time, but they encouraged me all the time. It was really helpful.
Well, if an orchestra only has older folks, then after a while the orchestra is going to not be there anymore.
Right.
I mean, that's just life.
Sure.
So I'm sure that it's encouraging not only to it was encouraging not only to the adults, but also to Sabira as the director, that she was creating an environment where the music would continue.
Sure.
Either after she left or after some folks were gone. And so I think it's great that you had that experience as a child. And how long did you play in the orchestra?
I think 6 or 7 years. Okay. Up into high school, I continued to play. And it was really fun. And I still play the flute and the piano, too. I didn't play the piano in the orchestra, but I played the flute. But it was exciting and inspiring to do it. And I think it kind of motivated me to continue playing later, I would say.
That's awesome. So do you have a favorite memory that you'd like to share? Or a fun story?
Well, I remember, I think we did The Sound of Music once, and that was, like my dad said, with the Fiddler on the Roof, a big deal to do. I believe we did The Sound of Music, and having the drama group and everything, it was very interesting to see how all the parts can work together in those things. But yeah, that was very interesting and fun.
That's awesome. Were there other kids that you knew that were also in the orchestra?
Well, every so often there was one who would come for a while. I don't really remember names or anything, but yeah, we had some, especially some of the violin students would come and play, and it was always interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do you feel was your biggest success as a participant in the orchestra?
Well, I think for me, or as the orchestra as a whole?
Either way, either way.
The orchestra as a whole, the big deal for me was that it kept on going. Because, many times in a small community, you have something like this and it's great for a few years and then it's gone. But to think that the orchestra continued all those years with people moving on and people joining and people moving on and people joining, it just continued, and it kept on playing. It's still playing great music, even after all these years of so much transition, it still goes, and I think that's a big success. Just the longevity of the orchestra is impressive.
I agree, and that is one of the reasons why we're wanting to celebrate the 50 years of the existence of the orchestra. Just exactly what you said. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. What do you feel like your biggest challenge was in the orchestra? Just being one of the youngest players?
Yeah, well, part of it was the music was hard for me. It was challenging because I was a beginner. And I remember it motivated me, though, to practice a lot, more than I would have. And I think that was the biggest challenge, was just playing well enough to keep up. And then I think it inspired me to practice more and try to get better so I could play the harder pieces as we came up to them.
And were you also at the same time playing in a band at your school?
Yeah, school band. Yeah.
And how did those two compare?
I always thought the orchestra was a little more challenging. The music tended to be challenging because in band there were a lot of beginning students, of course, and you have to go slowly with beginners. And we had all the different instruments, but the orchestra, most people already knew how to play pretty well, so you could do more challenging music. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share while you have the opportunity?
Well, I just say I think it's great if the orchestra can continue, because it's, for a small town, it's such a neat opportunity that, a young person can decide to join the orchestra. It's a big deal to be in an orchestra, So I think it's a great opportunity. I think it should continue.
Well, that's our plan.
Great.
That's our plan.